how do you choose whom to be on the bench when any POSH issue come to the organization?
It says that every workplace should provide a safe working environment, especially to women. Out of 300 companies, only 81 have been reporting the cases. Everything is in papers, not in the intent. Any woman of any age coming to the workplace, irrespective of whether she's an employee, she's an intern, she's a vendor, she's a client representative, has the right to file a complaint of sexual harassment if that happens within the workplace. If you have gender neutral POSH policy within the organization, the internal committee can very well take such complaints.
POSH Act for men doesn't stand any chance. So welcome, Leeza. Again, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Last time we spoke about DEI and we thought of, I think I remember, we very subtly talked about POSH when I asked that question, how do you choose whom to be on the bench when any POSH issue come to the organization? But that's just not the question in itself. It's like a very vast topic and we really want to explore. And thanks for bringing that idea to us so that we know exactly. But sure, organization should also know, where they sit on it. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the context. Why POSH is actually required and what does it aim to achieve? And whether it is small organization or bigger organization.
Thank you, Ankesh, for inviting me to, again, on your podcast to discuss about such a very important topic, where I call the POSH or prevention of sexual harassment as more of a law on dignity and respect at workplace. Now, to talk about the legislation coming into being, the POSH Act, which is the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Protection and Redressal Act came into effect in 2013. Now, if we talk about the purpose of this act, the purpose of this act, as the act itself says, prevent any incidences of sexual harassment. How? By creating more awareness, by creating knowledge about what the act says, by holding workshops, sessions, trainings. That is how you prevent something, because the more the people are aware of their rights, you can prevent it. Protection. The law also provides you with a safe environment. It says that every workplace should provide a safe working environment, especially to women. Now, if prevention and protection is not enough, then there is also redressal mechanism under this act. So as far as the redressal is concerned, the law says every organization should have an internal committee to inquire about such cases of sexual harassment if that arises, and that it also provides a secured and safe platform. So what does it mean? It means that within the organization there is a committee who is going to take the complaint, if there is any, on sexual harassment filed by a woman. The committee is also bound to maintain confidentiality and provide a safe environment so that women can come and speak up about any such incidences of unwelcome, unwanted behavior within the organization. So the Act lays down the foundation for a safe working environment by providing protection, by helping prevent it, and also providing a redressal mechanism within the organization. Now, coming to the fact, this act applies to whom? This act applies to any organization which has 10 or more employees. Okay. Right? So the horizon is 10, minimum 10, and the maximum could be thousands.
But isn't that not good? I mean, considering less than 10 should also be considered under the POSH Act?
Yes, less than 10 also comes under the POSH Act for unorganized sector. Now, it's very interesting and fascinating. I'm sure it is an information for everybody that the POSH Act also applies to our dwelling houses. Right? The home that we stay in. The POSH Act applies there as well. Now, one may ask how?
The domestic violences?
Not domestic violences, specifically under the POSH Act. How it applies to our dwelling houses, we have house helps we have maids, we have
Okay.
female workers who come to our house. There could be cleaning staff. And if there is any unwanted, unwelcome behavior, or there is any cases of sexual harassment, even against those people working in our house help, our house staff, POSH applies there. Now, in organized sector where there is 10 or more employees, or it could be a startup, it could be a mid-sized company, or it could be a huge corporate, it could be a public sector organization. Now, in those kind of organized sectors, there is an internal committee who investigates into such complaints. But when it comes to our dwelling houses, definitely we cannot have an internal committee, right? In that case, there are local committees where one can go and lodge their complaint, and the way it is investigated within an organized sector, the same way the local committee also can investigate any such incidences of sexual harassment if that happens within our dwelling houses. So POSH Act, it covers every woman who's out there working, irrespective of she's working in an organized sector or she's working in an unorganized sector.
But when it comes to dwelling houses, how many of them are actually aware that POSH Act actually applies there?
Unfortunately,
None.
none.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, none, unless and until such initiatives are taken where those people are made aware of their rights and their duties. Even if we talk about organized sectors, the statistics, there's not too many statistics either of how many companies, or what is the data of non-compliance. However, I was reading through a recent report submitted by Center of Economic Data and Analysis from Ashoka University, where they did a study of 300 listed National Stock Exchange listed companies on their reporting structure on POSH. And the report says that out of 300 companies, only 81 have been reporting the cases.
Oh.
Only 81. And out of that 81, only half of them have been, more than half of the cases have been reported by only 12 companies. So that is the that is how the act falls short of compliance.
But it is still there in the system, in the books, in the knowns of the organization.
Absolutely.
People are not reporting it for what reasons?
Yes. So there are various reasons for not reporting it. It could be lack of awareness. Secondly, even if some companies are aware of the act, the lack of intention. And then thirdly, also a lack of trainings, and also you could say most of the companies out there, they think it is a checkbox. It is a law which needs to be complied with as a checkbox, and not actually owning it. There is a difference between just doing it for the purpose of compliance and then owning it.
Yeah, basically there is a difference between the ground realities versus the paper policies.
Absolutely.
And there's a big gap which needs to be filled up.
Yes.
So there are two gaps which we just spoke about. One, that dwelling houses don't know what POSH Act is, so somebody should take an ownership and make them aware.
Yeah.
But how many cases have been reported there? Are there regular cases?
No, we do not have such data. We do not have such data. So time and again, if I talk about specific areas, like we see that in Noida, the nodal officer comes up every year with a notification that all the organizations, I'm talking just about the small area. Within the entire country, where the nodal officer always comes up every year with a notification that we urge the companies to come across and file their annual report. So when we talk about POSH compliance in any organization, there are certain parameters. Like, first of all, one needs to have a policy in place, because that is the guiding, those are the guidelines for the organization, keeping in mind what are the rules and regulations under the POSH Act. So having a policy in place is the first thing. Next, to have an internal committee. Now, when I say internal committee, that committee has to be formed within the organization, where there are people within the organization representing the committee. As per the POSH Act, the committee members, minimum number of members in the committee should be 4, 3 from the organization and 1 external member. The purpose of having an external member is to have a neutral person within the
But
committee.
the formation of the committee that I remember in certain instances, this neutral member also comes from the same industry or same company
No,
sometimes.
no, no. That is that in that case, if that happens, there are numerous High Court and Supreme Court cases where if the committee has not been formed as per the laws
Rules.
yes, as per the laid down rules and regulations under the POSH Act, then and an inquiry has happened and there is an outcome. Of course, at the end of the findings, at the end of the inquiry, the committee will come up with a report, right? And then either the accused or the respondent, both of them have the right to go and appeal. And then the courts have found out, because the committee was either not formed properly, or if there's a proper formation of the committee members did not actually did not go through the process as per the laid down laws, meaning that they did not follow the principles of natural justice, not giving enough enough time and enough opportunities
So
for.
even if there is a awareness, there is no intent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you talk about the intent and awareness and how it goes, I think the most important factor here is what is the culture of the organization. If the leadership talks the talk,
That's a good point.
right? If the leadership talks the talk and walks the talk and makes sure that they have zero tolerance towards any such incidences of sexual harassment, that is where it drills down.
Exactly.
Right?
I
That
completely
it is
agree.
there. The leadership plays a very important role.
Completely agree on to that, because
Yeah.
you are creating the awareness,
Yeah.
you're doing the training,
Yeah.
but there's still zero intent.
Yes, absolutely. Unless and until there is intent, no amount of training, no amount of
Would work.
awareness would work. So it's more of a company culture.
And eventually, I think we are going into the very great formation of why POSH Act has its own relevance, why a lot of organizations are not complying to it, and now we see the role of the leadership into this.
Yes.
So let's take a deeper look at the role of leadership. There should be a proactive conversations.
Absolutely.
There should be intent in everybody, not just leadership. So leadership could organize the awareness, can do the training part as well. They can employ somebody and create that committee. What if everything still stays, but as you mentioned, there should be a zero tolerance
Absolutely.
model.
Uh-huh.
Still it doesn't work. What is the role of a leadership in that case?
Okay. So leadership, as I said, plays very important role in an organization, especially when it comes to implementation of a workplace which is respectful, right? What I have seen in organizations where the leaderships are serious about compliances, and rather than more than compliances, having a healthy work environment, a work environment which is respectful, and where employees feel a sense of belonging. So what happens there is, I have also found organizations where leaders think that the POSH training are not meant for them, it is just for the work persons. And there are also organizations where leadership also sit through the trainings. They are equally involved. They understand the importance of it. When the leaders and the work persons come together, sit through a training together, everybody is, there is no hierarchy at that time. And then even the work persons feels they are equally involved, and they are also part of this process, and that creates a sense of safety, that creates a sense of belonging, that our leaders are equally equally aware and equally responsible to maintaining a respectful workplace for us.
So there are basically two scenarios. One where they have formed a beautiful, workplace environment where POSH is not even happening. Everybody is so cautious about, how the workplace safety is. The second is where everything also happens, but the POSHs are not reported, and even if they're reported, the intent gets lost.
There are cases,
There are cases. So, right.
many where everything. If that happens, and what does it indicate about it, about that workplace, about that organization, or about that company, that everything is in papers, not in the intent. right? So there are instances where young companies maybe are taking this very seriously. So what I advise my clients is, when you are hiring someone, when you are getting a contract signed, let them read the POSH policy. Make it a part of the contract signing document, and say that we are a zero tolerance company as far as sexual harassment is concerned. Let them read it, let them sign it, let them take an undertaking and give it to you, so that tomorrow they cannot come and take the stand that I was not aware about this act. That is how you create awareness.
But that's not just for the people who are joining the company.
Yeah.
Now, considering the POSH Act came in 2013, company would have started long back, like
Yes, it
2000.
does.
So whenever they update their policies, it should be definite sign through with every single employee who joined ever since then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, the POSH Act says that every organization should conspicuously place the policy in place, that we have a policy. Secondly, who are the internal committee members? Let's say there is any incidents, it can be easily reported. One do not have to look for where to report about this incident that had happened to me. So the law says you should have a policy. It should be conspicuously placed at your workplace. The committee members, their contact details, their email IDs should be put in the notice board, very visible. Now, one very important aspect of the POSH Act is, any women of any age coming to the workplace, irrespective of whether she's an employee, she's an intern, she's a vendor, she's a client representative, irrespective of who she is, right, has the right to file a complaint of sexual harassment if that happens within the workplace.
Could be anyone.
Could be anyone. Could be anyone. And then there are instances where companies come and tell me, ma'am, we are a small company. We have 10 or more employees, but then all of the employees are male. Why do we need to, follow the compliances under POSH Act? Now, the question is, although you are all, there's only male members in the organization, but you could be having client representative who could be a woman. You could be having maybe cleaning staff who could be a woman. You could be having some security guard who could be a woman.
Something that we actually spoke about in our previous episode as well. I remember you mentioned the same thing about not necessarily that it's a male or run organization.
Right.
There are not females there, so we don't need a POSH. But shouldn't this apply to males as well?
Yes, it should. It should. So what happens is, if there are any instances where rather the male member is harassed by a woman, all right, if you have a gender neutral POSH policy within the organization, the internal committee can very well take such complaints.
So we'll come to that.
But I would definitely like to make a disclaimer here. Now, internal committee under the POSH Act is supposed to take complaints only by women. It could be against a woman as well. So
the POSH Act for men doesn't stand any chance?
It doesn't. It would be wrong to say it doesn't stand, because if there is any false complaint by any women against a male employee, and in that case, if at the end of the inquiry it is found out that it was a false and malicious complaint, the punishment which are laid down, and those are mostly, whatever is laid down in the service rules and HR handbook and all, disciplinary policies. It could be demotion, it could be transfer, it could be termination also. In that case, the same punishment applies to the female employee who has falsely filed a complaint of sexual harassment. So in that way, it would be wrong to say it does not protect men. It does protect men against any false complaint of sexual harassment.
Leeza, I'm not going to talk about what are the loops in the act, because I have seen multiple cases. I mean, they have been reported in certain organizations, but when you're into a network zone, you get to know about them. There's one such case which was reported about that false allegation on somebody, and then this guy was asked to leave and he got laid off from that organization, but that was a false allegation.
Okay. So,
nothing happened. So probably either the organization, to save its own reputation, when they know that this woman who have put up the allegation, even if she's not helping us out in any which ways, we cannot just leak this out that there are sexual harassment happening in my organization, because that can put the stocks down or can have a bad reputation on us. So they would eventually go and amicably ask, I think you should leave the organization to this male employee.
I'm sure such incidences definitely happen. There have
So
been
they are not
incidences.
counted within those 81 out of 300 that you mentioned.
No, those are the very limited numbers I'm talking about. I mean, if you talk about the
As an
entire,
example.
yeah. So what I'm saying here is, if that is the case, then what the men in that case have the right to go and appeal against the recommendation
The
of the
only
internal
problem is that
committee.
men come with a psychology that I have a child to take care of, I have a family to take care of. What if I go to the another organization and when they do a follow-up check on me, they found out that I've been executed because of the POSH Act, I am not going to get that job.
Right.
So they try to hide that
It is for both the genders. I would say
No, I'm
the
not
same
saying
thing.
that it is not for both the genders. It is
Right.
just that the loops are violating.
Right, I'll tell you. I'll give you a very a real life example where I helped a client. So this client was working in a multinational organization where the client was traveling with another female client, and they were from one city to another city, and during the trip, the female employee, she complained of sexual harassment against this male counterpart. And what happened, instead of holding an entire inquiry, I mean, it was not even taken by the internal committee of that organization, and he was asked to leave. He was asked to leave. Right now, what happens is, what are the violations here? First of all, there's a violation of the constitutional rights, right? Secondly, he was not given a chance to
Prove
say his
himself.
story. Thirdly, it's a violation under the POSH Act as well. So when the client came to us, we helped draft a very strong legal notice, send it to the organization, and in fact the organization was also trying to prevent him to, because he was in a very senior position, and the network, right? So organization was calling up other organizations wherever he was trying to apply for a job, saying that there have been disciplinary, and they have put it under disciplinary
Actions.
actions, not specifically calling it POSH. Rather, it should have been actually an investigation under POSH. Let it come under POSH, let the committee investigate it and come to a conclusion whether there have been any incidences of sexual harassment or not. Because the POSH Act also says that when it comes to inquiry, principles of natural justice has to be followed. You cannot just hear one side of the story and come to a conclusion. You need to be a neutral committee. And that is why within the POSH Act also, it says that your committee members should be 4 minimum, with 3 from the organization, 1
neutral.
external. The chairperson should be a woman. 50% of the committee members should be women, and 50% could be male or female. However, it is always advisable to have equal number of gender representation, and rather I suggest having a committee of 4 rather than having a committee of 4. Have a committee of 5, because what happens in that case is, when you have a 5-member committee, including the external member who is not from the organization and is a neutral person, even if there is a difference of opinion, let's say half of the committee members think that it is a case under POSH, and accordingly whatever the punishment or recommendations needs to be met out, and the other half feels no, it is not. At least when you have an odd number in the committee, then you have a majority decision, right? And that always helps to come to a conclusion. What is the objective of having an internal committee? The internal committee, as I mentioned at the beginning, is supposed to maintain confidentiality. Why confidentiality? Reason being, whenever there is a case of sexual harassment coming out in the public, it is the reputation of the organization also which is at stake. It takes a lot of effort, resources, hard work to bring an organization to a level of, repute. So it tarnishes that reputation, brand image, share market, stocks, everything is at stake. And there have been so many instances, so many organizations, Fortune 500 companies also, where they had seen this kind of fluctuations in the stock market and settling matters out of the court because of such incidences of sexual harassment.
But again, those are the larger organizations. organizations where it
organizations,
impacts. No,
yes.
it's the smaller organizations of 25 people.
Yeah.
The brand reputation, and there are two things. In fact, when the sexual harassment or the POSH is being reported, it is within those people, the
Yeah.
internal committee.
Yes,
And
yes.
you said, they have to keep that confidential.
Confidential.
It doesn't work that way because they promote that, I'm in the committee and I'm doing this, and this is what the case has been.
They
This
should
guy.
not. That should not. That is where.
But
that
that's
is
a 25
that. I'll tell you what. Why did this happen? Why does it happen in? Let's say, for example, a 25 people organization. That will
No,
only
I'm saying
happen.
whether they should brag about it, they should not, which is
no.
one thing.
See. They are a part of committees of public information. It is not only within the organization, but it should be put, as I said, even in the notice board, saying that this is our POSH committee and this is the contact number and this is the email ID as per the law. Why? Why? Because even if there is an intern coming, even if somebody who's come
They
for
should
an
know.
interview, they should know that this organization has a committee in place. If something like this happen, I can report it, right? Now, in a smaller organization, if committee members are bragging about it, what does it reflect on the organization? That means they did not have the proper training.
Exactly. So
And-
we go
and
back to the role of leadership,
leadership.
where awareness is there, training is there, but intent is zero.
Absolutely. They should be well trained. They should know their rights and responsibilities. In fact, it is not out of context to put it across a very important point here that the internal committee also has equal rights, equal powers of a civil court. Meaning, the internal committee has the power to call for witnesses, take in documents into evidences, like the judges in the civil court have all this power to summon someone. Let's say there is a witness in an incident that have happened, and then that witness moved over to another organization. How as an internal committee, again, you have a time limit as well. The POSH inquiry should be conducted within a period of 90 days from the date of receiving the formal complaint to finally, inquiring and submitting the report. It's a 90-day period. Now, let's say during that investigation, one of the witnesses moved to another organization, right? What control does the committee has? Otherwise, but the law says, as an internal committee, you have equal rights, equal powers, power of a civil court. So you can summon that person even if that person is sitting somewhere else in the country and not working in your organization. So that is the power of the internal committee, and that is why it is very, very, very important to educate, to make aware of the responsibilities of the internal committee. Whatever they are doing, they have a lot in stake in terms of ensuring that the inquiry has happened as per the laid down laws and they have followed the principles of natural justice.
So in order to have a committee more strengthened and to understand their effectiveness, they should be given enough powers to act like a civil court.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't happen most
That
of the
doesn't
cases.
happen because again there are
One, I may be wrong, but internal committee, out of the 4, 3 are coming from the same organization. They have to ensure that the brand reputation doesn't get spoiled, or probably they're looking at their own MDs of the word or CEOs of the word and the owners and the founders of the word, that they have to protect their image as well.
right. And that is where the role of leadership comes in, where the internal committee also is given the liberty to act as an independent inquiry agency. It's a fact-finding agency. That is what they are doing, right? The internal committee. Now, the internal committee, if it is influenced by the leaders, or let's say there is a complaint against one of the senior leaders, that is again another dilemma or question that the internal committee has to deal with. However, if the organization has that kind of an environment where there is ownership, where when they say there is zero tolerance, it means that it is zero tolerant towards anybody, irrespective of whether it's a senior officer or it is the junior most within the organization. Law is equal.
So we talked about the efficiency of ICC, but how does company should move from just checking the POSH or ticking the POSH on a checklist, then actually ensuring that it has more, a respect-driven and inclusivity-driven solutions, or probably, how do you call it, the justice that is being given to the POSH victims as well as the other guy.
Right, that's right. So, one, to have very strong, policies which everybody should be aware of. What happens is whenever you are working in an organization, maybe you are not even aware there is a policy that exists. Maybe you're not even aware that there is an IC. Now, it is the role and responsibility of the human resource, HR department, as well as the leadership to make sure everybody who's walking into the organization. I'll give you a very classic example where I thought this is how implementation should be. Very recently, I went to the cantonment area, Subroto Park, and I was just entering the CSD canteen area, and just while entering the complex, I saw a big board where it says, "This is a place where we do not tolerate any kind of sexual harassment. We have a committee in place. This is their email
I think I've
address."
seen that as well.
Yeah, it is like
it's on the
quite
board.
big on board. I mean, I was so impressed. It's a complex, it's a market complex. Everybody is walking out there, but then that falls under, the Kant area, and they have put it right there. I, as a customer, I as a visitor, I mean, I may be going to the bank, I may be going to the CSD, or I may be going anywhere there, shopping complex, but then they have put it there. That is how you build that culture.
They have not just protected that a small proximity area, but they have the
Exactly.
entire area
Their entire
they work in.
area, anybody who's walking in, they know, okay, this is a
This is
safe.
where I'm protected.
This is where I'm protected. They have a redressal mechanism, and that is what the law says. But if you walk to an organization, if you walk
It's
to
not
any
there.
company, the moment you go to the reception, it should be there.
आप सीसीटीवी की निगाह में वो
जैसे
नहीं
आप
होता.
सीसीटीवी की निगाह में है, बिल्कुल उसी तरह ये भी होना चाहिए
exactly.
कि आप यहाँ पॉश पॉलिसी है और there is zero tolerance for it. We have a policy.
We have
and there's
seen
a-
certain organizations which
Where
do
to do
mention
it.
about
Yes,
this, that there is
yes.
zero tolerance
Yes,
policy here.
yes.
So, irrespective of whether it is POSH or any other relevant policies
Absolutely.
which are implemented in the organization,
Absolutely.
and I've seen organizations sign the DAC at the very first moment. So, the moment you join the organization, they ask you to sign all the policies there,
Right.
because that's also in their auditing process.
Absolutely.
But what if everything happens and I mean, I'm coming back again on the
Yes,
fact
yes,
that
yes.
the
This
intent.
happens. This
How can
happens.
you go back to
no,
the intent?
See, there again at the same time, it will not be out of context to here discuss about the Fanish Murthy case, which is like Infosys had to settle that matter out of court settlement and sell out a huge amount as damages. Now, Infosys is known for its good governance, right? Having strong policies. And Fanish Murthy was one of the blue-eyed boy of Infosys. But despite that, there were cases of sexual harassment against him filed by his executive assistant. And then finally, he had to leave the board. He had to leave the organization. He joined iGate. Right? He was in fact one of the founders of iGate, and he also helped iGate move, build and then build iGate similarly. But at the same time, again, in iGate also, he had an affair with one of his employees, and he failed to report it as a board member. And later on, again, sexual harassment allegations were put against him, came out him. So this is a classic example where despite having good governance, despite having all the policies in place, there would be instances where, because it is mindset, right? But what needs to be done at the very beginning, at the very inception is, make everyone conscious and aware, and that happens through lot of trainings, lot of conversations. What organizations do as a checklist is they file an annual report. Some of them don't even report any cases. They say that we have 0 cases of sexual harassment. Some do training once a year. Once all the employees are put together for a POSH training, done. Internal committee again once in a year. Do it repeatedly. I mean, I'm not saying you need a 1 hour, 2 hour training every month, but then there are so many ways. Like what I do with my clients is, we have come up with comic strips We call it adroitling safe stories. So what we do is we come up with comic strips every month where we take out one story, a very short 30-second read. You just read the comic strip and understand this falls under sexual harassment. It's just a reminder. Every month there's a comic strip which we are flowing to our clients, and then they disseminate it to their employees. It's just a reminder. It's just a reminder. Other ways could be if you have
I think two things which work. I mean, as you're mentioning, and I'm going through it, that comic strip catches our attention.
yes.
But more than that, when it comes for explaining how sexual harassment should be avoided, that two words in itself catch the attention even if you're not reading it. That you've been reminded about sexual harassment not to be done.
Exactly. That is how you can create event. I mean, if there is right intention, I think there are ways also to handle
No,
it.
I think even if their awareness, their training, their no intention, but these act can at least minimize the impact of having some certain things where
Absolutely.
intent should not even come as a third play.
Okay, that's a very important point you have brought up here. Again, one very important aspect of POSH Act is it is not the intent which matters, it is the impact. Now, I'll give you a very classic example. Let's say there is an annual party and everybody is going to that party, and there are three colleagues together who enters a lift, and there are two women. One is wearing a red dress and another wearing a black dress, and there is another male colleague along with them. Now, two female colleagues and one male. Three of them enter the lift and hi, hello, and he says, "Oh wow, you're looking very hot in the red dress." Okay, and to the one who's wearing the black dress, he says, "Oh, you are equally looking very, very beautiful and equally hot in the black dress." Now, let's see, the girl in the red dress says, "Thank you," and smiles. The girl in the black dress feels uncomfortable. She does not smile back. She has a rigid body language and, like, "Excuse me," maybe that's what she says. And she could even go ahead and say, be very vocal that, "I do not like such comments or compliments. Please do not do it." Now, same compliment given to two women, similarly dressed. One says, "Thank you." All right? The other says, "No, thank you." Now, law says if somebody says no, thank you, okay, because it impacted her, that gesture is not welcome, stop. If you repeat it, that will fall under sexual harassment. So very important aspect of POSH Act is impact, not intent. Because it happens. I have seen in my trainings and seminars, leaders and people coming and saying, "Ma'am, we did not intend to." But the point is, the test is not on intent. The test is what is the impact, how somebody is taking it.
So I think that's a very great example. So not every case is black and white.
No, not at all. It's a very gray area.
It's a very gray area. So
Yeah.
how can HR leaders can ensure they're dealing in certain sensitive cases,
Right.
perceptive cases? How do these guys should deal in those cases?
Well, see, being an HR, one has to be empathetic. And I'm not saying only towards the victim, but should be mindful towards the accused as well. Because at the end of the day, it is the reputation of both the individuals as well as the organization. Now, as an HR, what happens is, see, we are talking about such cases where instances could be very...
The contexts are widely open.
Yes, context
Perceptions
is
are going
wide.
haywire.
Absolutely. It could be as simple as you're looking beautiful in this hot, red dress and not liking it, to maybe going to physical sexual harassment, where somebody is maybe bruising
Making certain
or
comment or hitting
no,
him.
it could be even amount to rape, because there are instances. If you go, if we talk about, there is a very detailed report submitted by Supreme Court Justice Hema Kohli, which is retired now, on Malayalam film industry, where it talks about how the women are treated in it's a very detailed report, and it came up in 2000. It was submitted to government in 2019, but it took 5 years to release that report, with almost 65 pages redacted to conceal certain information. So imagine the depth of this, the gravity of how women work in various organizations. So we are talking about that context, from very simple comment to something as heinous as rape. As in fact, again, the entire POSH Act, the genesis, or I could say the origin, was the famous case of Bhavri Devi. Right. So what happened in that case, and that was in 1992. So what happened in Bhavri Devi case is she was working for government of Rajasthan, state government, and her job was to prevent child marriages. Now what happened in the occasion of Akha Teej? There was this, they have this community wedding. So in the occasion of Akhatis, there was this very influential family from Rajasthan who was getting their son married to a 9-month-old girl.
9 months?
Yes, 9-month-old girl. Now, Bhavri Devi objected to it. Of course, it was part of her job. When she came to know of it, she went to restrict that and say that this is illegal, child marriage, and then she's just 9-month-old, you cannot do that. What happened is this very influential family of Rajasthan, of course, they went ahead with the wedding, and then the next day they raped her and tortured her husband as well. She went from pillar to post to file her case, but police did not take up her case initially. FIR was delayed, and she went to even the government because she was doing her duty. State government of Rajasthan, she did not get support. Finally, after running from pillar to post, an NGO called Vishakha took up her case. All right, and then represented her in the courts, and finally it came to Supreme Court. And in 1997, from 1992 to 1997, 5 years. In 1997, Supreme Court came up with the guidelines known as Vishakha guidelines. That was kind of first, specific legislature. I'll not say fully legislature because it was just guidelines, where it was mentioned how women should be protected and what should be the work environment when women are working in a workplace. But then the irony is that was just guidelines, no law as such, where non-implementation would attract any punishment or fine. So it took another 20 years. In 2012, we all know about the Nirbhaya Kand.
Yeah.
And after the Nirbhaya Kand, the entire conscience of the nation shook up, and all the world was looking at India like, what are they going to do now? And that is when the legislature came into effect, and that is how the POSH Act 2013 came into effect after the Nirbhaya Kand, because that is when everybody felt that we need a strong law wherein we ensure that when women are working specifically in a workplace, they need to be protected. Because as far as protection against harassment is concerned, or if you talk about equal rights and dignity, it is laid down in Indian Constitution. It laid down in IPC as well. There are fines, there are punishments also. But this act came specifically to protect the rights of a woman, to provide her a place which gives her respect and dignity while she's working.
What happened in 1992 versus when the POSH Act came into its existence in 2013, it took us almost 21 years to realize that we really need to have a POSH Act in the play.
Absolutely.
Now, considering we talked about PPR, we talked about intent, awareness, there are still cases which are not reported.
Yes.
What is that one suggestion you would give to those people who are actually getting harassed, but are or probably unable to report those cases for any reason? What would you give them as a suggestion?
So first of all, I think it is very, very important to not take any such behavior. First of all, raise your voice. You're not weak. There are mechanisms, there are ways to, get your concerns addressed and redressed. If an organization has a policy in place, has a committee in place, is filing the reports annually and undertaking trainings and seminars to educate their employees, that should give them the platform to bring out that voice. And then, as you rightly asked, the role of HR needs to be again empathetic to such women coming out and reporting such incidences. However, again, under the POSH Act, the HR is not supposed to investigate anything. The HR is just to listen, be empathetic, and guide them to the internal committee. That is why the internal committee plays a very, very important role here. Now, as far as awareness is concerned, again, HR should own it, as the part of their role and responsibility to disseminate that information to the employees. Uh, Despite that, let's say you have an internal committee and you have an HR, you feel that they are there, but then you are still apprehensive of reporting that complaint. Now there is a SHE box, SHE box, which is a platform. It's an online electronic platform under the Ministry of Women and Child Development, wherein you can report such cases of sexual harassment. If you do not feel like complaining it, ideally your internal committee should be neutral committee where you should feel free to go and approach and file a complaint. If not, you can also file your complaint online under the SHE box. And what happens there is, once the complaint is filed, the SHE box, the Ministry of Women and Child and Development, they will contact the company and they will inquire whether they have an IC in place, and then they will say that we have received a complaint as such, coming from one of your employees, you need to investigate it. And there have been also cases where, internal committee has refused initially to take such complaints. So what is the test for internal committee? There have been so many cases where clients come and ask me that we do not know if we should take this case or not, because it is a gray area. We think this may not fall under POSH. It's fine. It may not fall under POSH. It
But
could be a
can be
case of
investigated
harassment.
to come up to
But
that.
yes, take the case. Investigate it. We are not asking you to
Registered it under POSH. It may not be a POSH
It may
act,
not be a, but at least take it.
Yeah.
All right, take it. Hear both sides of the story. Because under the POSH Act, again, within the framework of how internal committees should conduct an inquiry, it also says that if it is not very grievous offense, you can always ask the parties to come to a settlement. Settlement could be a simple apology is fine to the women. She may say, all right, I do not want him to be demoted, or I do not want him to have a pay cut or terminated. I mean, obviously, again, that will depend on how serious the offense is. But she can also say that he may write a written apology to me and I'm fine with it.
Achha, Leeza, one more thing, and probably my last to go question with respect to the same advice to the employees, even if they're hesitant, and if we really have to break their hesitance, are there any committees outside of the organization where they can go and report as a backup plan if they are hesitant to report it within the organization? I mean, just like, can they hit the door of a lawyer?
So, no. So what happens is, ideally, they should report it to the internal committee. But if it is such an offense where, it could be a physical harassment, or more serious, it's a criminal offense, they can also report it to the police and file an FIR. And then an investigation can also parallelly be, conducted, but then it will be independent of each other.
Then it means that organizations are not part of it.
If they report it to the police also, again, the police will also come to the organization to investigate why was it not reported within the internal committee. I mean, they will just come and maybe...
in that case, organization
inquiry.
can say that, that's nothing related to me. You wanted to inquire about the victim and the other abuser, you can actually go ahead, and then I can leave them, I can terminate them both of them.
What happens is, ideally, first of all, they should approach the internal committee. All right, the employee should be comfortable enough and confident enough in the internal committee that yes, this is going to be redressed if I report it. First, they go there. If they feel that crime is such that it also needs to be, an FIR also needs to be lodged, then they can also parallelly file a complaint to the police. And as I said, there is also option of SHE box. So these are the various ways where a complaint can be filed.
So those were the questions about how POSH Act can be seen. And of course, I always encourage people to talk about, if they have anything in respect to, whether I should report the POSH or not. I mean, I think that's more of a critical question that I always go with. A lot of people don't report, and then that's the start of the conversation we always mention. The reported cases are less than what the estimated cases should be. So you've still got any questions? We got Leeza right up here. her details in the description box, so you can definitely reach out to her, and she'll be more than happy to help you out with her advice as to how you can tackle a certain situation. Thank you so much, Leeza, for turning up onto the show again and talk about POSH in the greater detail. Because, as again I mentioned, the last time we were talking about just how this can be implemented, but I think we wrote an entire story about it, and I think two of the brilliant cases that she mentioned about, that one example, along with that one example, could be a good facilitating example for you. So feel free to ask her and give her a nudge, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ankesh.
Thank you.
Thank you once again.